For our fieldwork project, we worked with the Jazz Bandits.
The Jazz Bandits are a local band that plays in their spare time at small venues throughout Alachua County, such as Satchel's Lightning Salvage.
We first caught up with them during a break at one of their Satchel sessions, and they were kind enough to give us an open invitation to their practices.
During one of our meetings with the Jazz Bandits, they told us what it is about jazz that is appealing and who exactly this music appeals to.
So I think jazz is like the intersection. It's the intersection of all kinds of influences. You know, classical, blues, African music, Brazilian. I mean, it's just, I think why people really love it so much is the freedom. You have so much freedom in it.
Do you guys think that there's a particular age of people that listen to this music, or do you think it's just very widespread?
Like, who's the audience?
Yeah.
Is that what you're wondering?
I think all ages, but
I think the genre of jazz, there's different genres within jazz.
Within jazz there's like bebop and there's old standards, ballads and standards, and fusion, free jazz, and so it kind of depends.
But I think there's jazz programs in high school, so there's young people playing it. And like I mentioned, when we went to jazz camp, it was really kind of split between the older generation and the younger generation who are participating and enjoying it and listening.
When trying to define and classify jazz, we ran into some trouble. Is it blues? Is it jazz? Free jazz? Big band jazz? Ragtime?
Where is the line? There are so many songs that qualify as jazz, but don't seem to have much in common.
Take these two songs, for example. On first inspection, these two songs are ambiguously related at best, so we consulted the professionals to try and find a common root.
What you say is the closest to like the root of jazz, which
that's really hard to say. I mean, it's probably ragtime. Maybe ragtime was
I would say blues or gospel. But it's like, what kind of jazz are you talking? I mean, jazz is an evolution, and if you look at the history, first there was this, and then there was that, and then it became this, and they all
influence each other.
Yeah. But ragtime and Dixieland was probably the first.
The first organized,
that
kind of codified and written down too, because of Scott Joplin, who was classically trained. But it's kind of like saying, what's the root of classical music? Well, is it Gregorian chant? That's not what people go to listen to in concert halls.
No, it's true.
There doesn't seem to be much agreement on this, even among those permanently immersed in the field.
In the midst of this roundtable discussion, the group begins to delve into the history of jazz and its origins.
Well, I think that it's interesting because I think one of the commonly held views may be that it started with black musicians and may have started, during slave times, the genesis of it.
Well, Ken Burns says it was Jim Crow laws because there were these mulatto people who were mixed race people who were professional musicians in orchestras, and then there were African American people who played the blues and gospel. And then when they passed the Jim Crow laws, now this is Kimber, so I mean, I'm sure there's a lot more. It's not so simplistic. But then a lot of people got kicked out of orchestras. You couldn't play if you were part black. And so then there was this mixture of people who had orchestral training with people who played the blues.
In New Orleans.
In New Orleans.
Hey, I think it's really hard to say where the exact epiphany came from, the first genesis of jazz. I think, like anything else, it develops. Vic has a view that jazz started with Baroque music and with Bach.
Really?
Yeah, because I can see that. It's polyrhythmic.
It's polyrhythmic, it's polyphonic.
And polymelodic, or is that polyphonic?
Yeah,
When
yeah, and there's the whole thing with all the
melodies.
variations, which is,
Yeah.
you could
same
make
thing
the
as
point
doing
that it's the first
cadenzas.
improvisation. Yeah, and credenzas, in classical music, when you have credenzas, a lot of times the composers would write it out, but I think that may be common practice. There may have also been a lot of improvisation for originally.
At a certain point, we can no longer ignore the question of who this free-flowing music belongs to.
But I think they say, in the culture, that jazz is uniquely American. I know you say there was a classical roots to it, but it's seen as an American.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with
American
that. I think
cultural invention of songs.
I think that because America's a melting pot, however, that even though I think it really happened here, it also was happening in places like Brazil.
Yeah.
And
then Brazilian music got places where from the diaspora, it seems like, the African diaspora, because they had the polyrhythmic tradition.
So it could be seen as a blending of cultures.
But it did start in the Americas, and then it wasn't very, well, it was popular here for a little while, but then jazz musicians got more respect, it seems like, in Europe, and now,
It's popular in Asia.
it's very popular in Asia.
I think it's world music. I mean, there's something about jazz that speaks to people across the world.
After we picked their brains, they invited us to sit in on one of their practices, and we got to experience firsthand the art of jazz improvisation.